Okay, let's unpack this. Did you know the fashion and textile industry is considered one of the world's most environmentally damaging sectors? We're talking about truly shocking figures.
Mm.
Up to 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions, a staggering 20% of industrial water pollution,
Hmm.
and over 92 million tons of textile waste generated annually. It's a huge footprint.
It absolutely is. What's truly remarkable here, I think, is how an industry often criticized for its fast fashion model,
Mhm.
cheap disposable clothing, is now undergoing this massive transformation.
Right.
So today we're taking a deep dive into the world of sustainable fashion. We'll explore not just the environmental and social challenges it addresses, but also, the groundbreaking innovative materials emerging,
hmm
the new business models reshaping the market, and the surprising ways companies are adapting to a much more conscious consumer.
So you're about to discover how your clothing choices are directly impacting the planet. What incredible new materials are literally like growing in labs.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And how major brands are rethinking everything from how clothes are designed to how they're disposed of. Our goal is really to give you the inside track on this critical trend, with all the fascinating details from the latest insights so you're quickly well informed. So let's start with the sheer scale of the problem. I mean, beyond those startling emissions and water pollution figures we mentioned,
Hmm.
the industry uses 16% of the world's insecticides and 7% of herbicides just on cotton crops alone. That's huge.
Just for cotton.
Exactly. And then, when we wash our clothes, it contributes 9% of annual microplastic ocean discharge. It really makes you rethink every wash cycle, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
It's a heavy toll on our ecosystems.
It really is. And if we zoom out a bit, the impact extends far beyond just the environment. The fashion industry, at its core, employs about 13% of the global workforce in production.
Wow, 13%.
Yeah. Yet for decades, it's faced, significant criticism for labor rights violations. Issues like critically low wages, really unsafe working conditions, and even harassment in factories.
Right, the human cost.
Exactly. Then there's the persistent negative image concerning animal welfare. Groups like PETA consistently expose practices in producing materials like leather, wool, cashmere, down, mohair, fur. The list goes on.
And this is where the rise of fast fashion really amplified the issues, didn't it? You think of it, a buy cheap, wear a few times, then discard mentality.
Mm-hmm.
This just accelerated the cycle of mass production, rapid consumption, and ultimately massive waste. It essentially put the industry on this treadmill towards environmental and social exhaustion.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, a treadmill.
But fortunately, there's a strong counter-movement building, and things are really beginning to change.
That leads us to consider what's truly driving this massive shift. And the answer, largely, is you, the consumer. We're seeing a really clear demand.
Okay.
A 2023 YouGov survey across 5 countries found that approximately 55% of respondents considered sustainability an important factor when buying clothes.
Over half.
Exactly. And an even higher 65% valued sustainable brands more highly. That's a significant shift in consumer mindset.
And who's really leading the charge here? It seems to be largely millennials and Gen Z. They're particularly keen on sustainable fashion.
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
And while Gen Z might not have huge purchasing power just yet, the highly consumptive millennial generation, combined with Gen Z, they form the largest and most crucial consumer segment globally, especially given their anticipated exposure to long-term climate change impacts. They're demanding change.
Absolutely. And that consumer demand is fueling incredible innovation. The widespread adoption of sustainable fashion heavily relies on the development and scaling of new materials.
Right, the materials are key.
They really are. These generally fall into 3 fascinating categories: bio-based, recycled, and cultivated materials, all aiming to dramatically reduce environmental and social impact throughout the supply chain.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. Bio-based.
Right, so bio-based materials use natural raw materials, but they're processed in a far more sustainable way. Think beyond just traditional organic cotton and wool. For example, there's Pinatex. It's a biopolymer developed by Ananas Anum in the UK, which is ingeniously made from discarded pineapple leaves.
Pineapple leaves, wow.
Yeah, it's a versatile leather alternative created from agricultural waste. Really clever stuff.
Okay, and then recycled.
Recycled materials made by repurposing waste. A fantastic example is Econ YL. That's a regenerated nylon developed by Aquafil in Italy.
Econ and YL, I think I've heard of that.
You probably have. They've pioneered this process that repurposes discarded fishing nets and PT bottles into high-quality nylon. It can be used for new garments, even luxury items. It's a true circular solution for materials that once polluted our oceans.
Amazing. And the last one, cultivated.
Yeah, cultivated materials. These are produced by actually cultivating microorganisms or cells in a lab.
Okay, that sounds like science fiction.
It kind of does. But imagine your next pair of shoes being literally grown in a lab. That's the kind of innovation we're talking about. Examples include lab-grown diamonds, which are becoming more common, and lab-grown leather, notably developed by Vitro Labs in the U.S.
Okay, wow. So with all these innovations, how do you as a consumer know if a product is truly sustainable? That seems like the big question.
It really is. Transparency throughout the supply chain is absolutely key, and that's precisely where certifications come in.
Right, the labels.
Exactly. They act as trusted guides covering everything from ethical labor practices and fair wages, like the International Fair Trade Certification, which assures workers are paid fairly and have safe conditions, to animal welfare, with standards like the Responsible Down Standard or the PETA Vegan certification. You also have certifications like Cradle to Cradle, which focuses on safe, circular materials designed for reuse, and the Global Organic Textile Standard, or GOTS, for organic fiber products across the entire supply chain.
Got it. So look for those certifications.
Definitely. But this brings up a crucial point. What about greenwashing?
Ah, yes, greenwashing.
That's where companies make misleading claims about their environmental practices, often to appear more sustainable than they truly are. It's a real challenge.
So how do we fight that?
Well, authorities are stepping up to combat it. The UK's Competition and Markets Authority, for example, published their Green Claims Code back in 2021, setting clear expectations for environmental claims.
Okay.
And on an even larger scale, the European Commission announced its Green Claims Directive proposal in 2023, which is expected to be implemented by 2027. These are vital steps to ensure that sustainable claims are genuine and verifiable, which helps build consumer trust.
And it's not just guidelines, right? There are actual laws being passed globally to drive this change.
Exactly. Many countries, including the US, Australia, India, and the entire European Union, are adopting what's called Extended Producer Responsibility, or EPR.
EPR, okay, what's that?
Basically, it makes producers accountable for their products' end of life. It incentivizes them to design for durability and recyclability from the start.
Makes sense.
Yeah. The EU, for instance, has its REACH regulation restricting hazardous substances, and the Sustainable Eco-Design regulation targeting circularity in product design.
And what about the U.S.?
In the U.S., there are proposed laws like the Fabric Act aiming to improve labor conditions in garment factories, while New York's Fashion Act requires large companies to conduct due diligence on their environmental and social impacts.
So state-level action, too.
Definitely. Japan is also on board with new guidelines for environmental information disclosure and a roadmap for textile resource circulation. And even more aggressively, countries like the UK, France, and Australia are exploring taxes on fast fashion.
A fast fashion tax.
Yeah. With the UK even planning to use that revenue to improve recycling facilities, it's becoming a global legislative push.
It really sounds like it.
And it's fascinating how sustainability is becoming a truly significant economic driver, not just, an environmental imperative.
Okay, let's talk money then.
Right. The global sustainable fabric market is projected to grow from roughly $33 billion in 2024 to an incredible $75 billion by 2032.
Wow, more than double.
Yeah, showing an impressive annual growth rate of about 11%. And this growth is clearly fueled by increasing concern for the environment and, crucially, consumers' willingness to pay more. A 2024 PwC survey found consumers are willing to pay about 10% more for sustainable products.
10% more. That sounds incredibly promising economically. But there's a catch, isn't there? What's often called the green gap.
Ah, yes, the green gap.
This gap between high consumer awareness and willingness to buy sustainable products versus lower actual purchase rates. A major reason. Price.
Price is definitely a barrier.
Sustainable products often cost more due to increased production costs, particularly upstream in the supply chain, right? Where fair wages and sustainable materials add to the initial expense.
Exactly. Those upstream costs are real.
However, there's a potential solution being explored that sounds quite clever. If wholesalers, retailers, and brands adopt a fixed markup instead of a percentage-based markup,
Right, the markup strategy.
the final price can be significantly lower. Let's take an example. Say converting a $20 traditional t-shirt to a sustainable one might add about $4 to its production cost.
Okay, $4 extra cost.
With a traditional percentage-based markup, maybe the retailer doubles the cost, then adds some more. That t-shirt could end up retailing for maybe $68, A huge 240% increase from the original $20.
Which puts it out of reach for many.
Totally. But if only that added $4 is transferred to the final price, what's called a value transfer approach, the t-shirt could retail for just $24.
So $20 plus the $4 extra cost.
Exactly. That's just a 20% increase. This approach makes sustainable fashion far more accessible and could dramatically boost demand.
It really could bridge that green gap. And looking at the broader implications, we're seeing many companies embracing truly circular business models.
Circular models, okay. Like what?
Think about rental services for clothes, robust resale platforms, repair programs, and even upcycling old garments into new ones.
Right. Giving clothes a second life or third.
Precisely. And this isn't just good for the planet, it's proving to be good for business too. It creates entirely new revenue streams, helps optimize inventory, and significantly reduces environmental impact.
Makes sense.
The Ellen MacArthur Foundation estimates the resale, rental, repair, and remake market was already over $73 billion in 2021.
$73 billion.
Yeah. And it could surge to an astonishing $700 billion by 2030, accounting for nearly a quarter of the entire fashion market.
Wow, nearly a quarter. That's massive.
It is. And just think, recycling one mid to high quality clothing item can reduce CO2 emissions by 3 kilograms, and reusing textiles can reduce environmental impact by approximately 70 times compared to producing something brand new. That's a powerful incentive.
70 times less impact. Incredible. So who are the trailblazers making all of this happen? We've talked concepts. Let's talk players.
Good question. The sustainable fashion supply chain is complex, involving players on the upstream side, meaning raw material suppliers, and sustainable material manufacturers.
Okay, the makers.
And downstream, which includes brands, retailers, and businesses dealing with used products.
The sellers and recyclers.
Exactly. A key takeaway here is the rapid rise of specialized material manufacturers. We mentioned Vitrolabs Inc. earlier, pioneering cultivated leather production.
Right, the lab-grown leather.
Yeah. This isn't just about finding alternatives. It's fundamentally rethinking how materials are sourced, promising a future with significantly reduced ethical and environmental footprints compared to traditional leather. Then there's Aquafel, the leader in nylon production, with its EconYL regenerated nylon.
We talked about them fishing nets to fabric.
Exactly. And it's a game changer because it takes these discarded materials and turns them into high-quality nylon that's being used by major luxury brands like Prada and Gucci. In fact, EconYL represented 46% of Aquafil's total sales in 2023, showing real commercial success.
Almost half their sales.
Another innovator is Resale in Sweden. They use a unique dissolving pulp technology to create circulose from old cotton and rayon textile waste.
Circular.
This turns what would be garbage into a new, high-quality material that H&M, Levi's, and Zara have already adopted. Think of it as truly closing the loop on textile waste.
That's the dream, right? Closing the loop.
It really is. And speaking of closing loops, AmberCycle in the U.S. is a startup focusing on molecular recycling of polyester waste. Their Cycler material has already secured major deals with giants like Inditex for over 70 million euros in regenerated polyester.
Wow.
Demonstrating how advanced technology can create value from waste on a massive scale. And let's not forget, Unify in the U.S., a large-scale recycled fiber producer. They've already recycled around 35 billion peat bottles into their Reprieve polyester yarn.
35 billion bottles.
Diverting countless plastic bottles from landfills and oceans.
Okay, so that's the material side. What about the consumer-facing side? The resale market seems huge now.
Oh, it's truly booming. It's transforming how we think about owning clothes. ThreadUp in the U.S. is one of the largest online fashion resale platforms, managing millions of used items.
I've used ThreadUp.
Yeah. They even partner with major brands like J.Crew and Gap for customer trade-ins, making it incredibly easy for you to offload unwanted clothes and earn credit. Then there's Poshmark, more of a social resale app, which was acquired by Korea's Naver for $1.2 billion, aiming for broader global market reach.
Big money involved.
Absolutely. And Depop, hugely popular with Gen Z for streetwear and Y2K fashion, was acquired by Etsy for $1.63 billion. It shows how vintage and pre-loved items are now serious business.
Definitely.
For luxury goods, you have Vestiaire Collective from France and The Real Real from the US. They're pioneers, offering authenticated resale of high-end brands, ensuring quality and trust. And in Japan, Mercari has made selling used clothes a mainstream cultural practice, highlighting a shift towards valuing pre-owned items.
Right, but none of this resale stuff works without the infrastructure behind the scenes, right? The collection and sorting must be vital.
Absolutely crucial. ICO, or I Collect, in Germany, operates a global garment collection network. They partner with brands like H&M and Adidas to collect over 30,000 tons of textiles annually. They make it easy to drop off old clothes.
30,000 tons.
And the Boer Group in the Netherlands is a major EU collector and sorter, processing over 112,500 tons of used clothing annually and sorting them into over 350 different grades for various uses.
350 grades, that's specific.
It has to be. This level of meticulous sorting is crucial for effective recycling and reuse. And in France, EcoTLC, now rebranded as Refashion, operates the country's extended producer responsibility scheme for textiles, supporting collection and recycling efforts nationwide. These companies are really the backbone of a circular fashion economy.
The unsung heroes, maybe.
You could say that. And beyond the material and infrastructure innovators, many established fashion companies are directly driving sustainability within their own operations.
Like the big brands themselves.
Exactly. Luxury brands like Prada and Dolce & Gabbana, for instance, have completely stopped selling fur. That creates significant demand for sustainable alternatives. Burberry has pledged not to use exotic leather, pushing for innovation in that space. Patagonia, long known for its environmental commitment, offers a fantastic worn wear program. It not only provides repair services to extend garment life, but also sells used products, making sure their items stay out of landfills for as long as possible.
I love the worn wear program.
It's great. And even Hermes and Nike now offer repair services, signaling a shift in the industry's mindset from disposable to durable.
That's a big shift for brands like Nike.
It is. Collaborations are also essential in this transformation. Gucci, part of Kering, developed its own partially renewable non-animal material called Dimitra, and even upcycles its own manufacturing scraps into new products.
Wow, Gucci making its own material.
Yeah. And fast fashion giants like H&M are global leaders in in-store collection programs and have partnered with companies like Resale to incorporate recycled fibers into their denim. They're aiming for 100% recycled or sustainably sourced materials by 2030. It's a huge commitment.
That's ambitious.
Very. And
Yeah.
beyond environmental impact, fashion companies are also deepening their focus on social aspects and green finance. We see women's empowerment programs like the Cartier Women's Initiative, Gucci Chime, Gap's PACE program,
Right, the social side too.
and the Now I Can embroidery training program by Indian brand I Was a Sari in partnership with Gucci, fostering skills and opportunities. For green finance, H&M, Gap, and Bestseller are part of the Future Supplier Initiative to decarbonize the apparel industry, even funding offshore wind projects in Bangladesh.
Funding wind farms.
Yep. And H&M has green loan programs with banks like DBS to support supplier emissions reduction. These initiatives show a really comprehensive approach to sustainability.
Okay, so taking all this in,
Yeah.
what does it really mean for you, the listener? It feels like
Yeah.
we've covered a huge transformation.
It really is huge.
We've seen how the fashion industry is truly at this crossroads, moving from that old linear take, make, dispose model to a profoundly circular one. It's a journey driven by, well, us consumer awareness, but also incredible technological innovation and this growing web of regulations and strategic partnerships across the globe.
Exactly. And this raises an important question for all of us, doesn't it? As consumers, how do we continue to support this vital shift?
Right. What's our role now?
The data we've explored today shows a clear trend. Sustainability isn't a niche concept anymore. It's becoming a core expectation for how products should be made and consumed. Understanding the entire life cycle of your clothes, from the materials they're crafted from to their potential end of life, truly empowers you to be an active part of this profound change.
So being informed is key.
Absolutely. The future of fashion isn't just about what you wear, but how it's made and what happens to it next. That's the shift.
So maybe the final thought is this. Imagine a world where your favorite t-shirt could truly live on, not just for years, but maybe for generations, through endless cycles of rebirth and remaking. What new possibilities does that open up for personal style and conscious consumption when the clothes you love can genuinely have more than one life?